Welcome back to another edition of Through the Smoke, a Miami Hurricanes football and recruiting podcast here on the 24/7 Sports Network. David Lake, joined as always by Gabby Urrutia. We're here to preview the fourth official visit weekend of this month of June. Recruiting never stops, especially in June, where stuff's happening, dominoes are falling, and official visit season's kind of wrapping up, and then we turn the page to commitment season here in July, August, etc. So before we dive into things here on this podcast, want to highlight a couple of our sponsors, starting, of course, with Canes Connection. That is Miami's collective. They help assist Miami in this talent acquisition space via NIL. So go to canesconnection.com and go support those guys any way that you can. It's a great way to be a part of the program at a real grassroots level. Also want to highlight our guy, Nick Musarino at the Musarino Law Group. If you've been injured in a car accident, call 561-960-9870 or visit the musarinolowgroup.com and he can help you with your needs. Nick is a huge Miami Hurricanes fan and he'd love to talk Canes with you too. All right, Gabby, at the top of this podcast, in our last pod, we kind of mentioned, hey, Wednesday, Miami's having probably what's going to be their best individual prospect camp of the summer. Essentially, it's kind of a 2027 evaluation opportunity. There was a 2026 linebacker camping, hoping to impress Miami. Just want to give you the floor, the opportunity to kind of share maybe some takeaways from Wednesday's camp before we dive into this weekend's official visit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the camp weekend or the camp day was, I think, just some important context, both for the future and the present. I think probably the biggest storyline, David, that you're kind of highlighting was the fact that linebacker Jermichael Garrett, former Auburn commit, now playing his high school football at Baton Rouge Central, in Louisiana. He came down to work out for Miami, and it was essentially an opportunity to work out for the staff. I think they had tried to go see him a couple times in the spring, whether it was weather or just conflicts of schedule, just never really allowed Miami to get a full evaluation of Jermichael Garrett. So we're able to get him down for that Wednesday camp, put him through a couple drills, the 40, the broad, some, linebacker specific stuff alongside a few others. What I wrote on the site was basically if this camp session went well, it was going to be kind of like parlayed into an official visit over the weekend. Unfortunately, it was one of those camp situations where it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
So I don't anticipate Jermichael Garrett being a part of Miami's class. Curious to see what's next for him. He's a good player. He's a good kid. But again, it's just gonna. I just don't see Miami being the fit. I don't believe Texas A&M, who is scheduled to get an official visit this weekend, I don't believe they're gonna host either. So again, I think there's an opportunity for some other schools to kind of get a solid prospect in to their program potentially down the line. But I think that that's a recruitment that maybe still has a little bit more head. A couple other guys that I thought were notable. There was another linebacker that was working out next to Jermichael Carey in the class of 2026, Jacob Curry out of Nice in Point Vedra. I think it's Point Vedra Beach or something like that. It's where Tim Tebow went to high school. That's the only.
Right.
It's my only point of
Jacksonville
okay,
area.
Jackson, cool. So he is committed to Northwestern. He took an official visit to Louisville. He was truthfully way better of
More
a
impressive.
yeah,
Yeah.
more impressive of a linebacker than Jermichael Garrett was. He doesn't have the star rankings or the accolades, but he tested significantly better. Really impressive athlete. I think that that's an interesting name just to kind of maybe keep in the back of the pocket, maybe for down the line if Miami's still kind of searching the linebacker board. I think Jacob Curry again out of that Jacksonville area could be a name to potentially know or monitor for the Hurricanes after an impressive camp session. And then a couple 2027s, I think the most notable was Keegan Krucher, a top 247 arm out of the Northeast, originally from upstate New York, playing his high school football at Cheshire Academy. They just produced a Power 5 quarterback in Dante Reno, signed with South Carolina, just bounced back to play for his father at Yale. But a school that's produced guys in the past. So yeah, I think that's really just a majority of it. There were some other some local guys that were in. Frank Gore's nephew, Eddie Gore. David, I don't know if you're familiar with this name, but he's
Yeah,
out of
he's over
Fort.
here.
Yeah, he's over
Yeah.
in Fort Myers. He was not the biggest guy, as you could imagine, just being a Gore. They're typically not, but he was definitely the most impressive class 2027 running back that was in attendance. So he's a good player. I'm not sure if he's at Verot or at Dunbar. He's at one of those two schools. I think he
I've
was.
heard Verot, but
Okay, yeah, his max prep says Verot, but yeah, really talented player, and he, again, not the biggest guy, but I think he was turning heads all over the camp, and I think that he may be one to maybe just down the line see what it kind of looks like. Maybe if he gets back around the program and continues to maybe excel, if maybe he becomes a name to circle in the 2027 class. But he was certainly impressive. I think that's kind of like the general group
yeah.
that I think was probably maybe worth highlighting most.
Let's turn the page, discuss this weekend's official visitors, kind of highlight the guys to know as we preview it. Uh, Before we go name by name, Gabby, I think at the start of the week or even midweek, Miami was expecting 10 official visitors to come see things in Coral Gables. Where are things at now? Is it still a list of 10 guys, or is it going to be fewer than that here as we, enter this final weekend of official visit season in June?
Yeah, it's going to be fewer. A couple guys, their situation. Well, one is a certain no, and that's Jaquez Wilkes, the Wadley top 247 edge out of Alabama. Just had some
Yeah.
personal situations come up in his life, and out of everybody's control. Miami was really hoping to get him on campus. They got him back on campus this spring. We'll see if maybe down the line Miami could re-engage. But one of those things where I think Wadley intended to come. I mean, where Wilkes intended to come. Miami's been doing a really good job in that recruitment, so we'll see if they can, make up for this maybe at a different point. The other one is top 247 wide receiver Vance Spafford, the Georgia commit. Miami has long been a program that has been rumored to be on a sort of flip watch for Spafford, and then unfortunate situation developed on Wednesday where basically he was telling people he got sick, he wasn't going to be able to make it. Miami, of course, still working through this whole situation. And I think as of Friday morning, the latest that I have kind of gathered is that Miami's hoping that they're able to get him in by Saturday. So this visit is still very much up in the air. If you want to call it, maybe unlikely, I think
Yeah.
that that's fair. But Miami is still kind of working through different channels to try to get Van Spafford to campus. And look, and truthfully, for what it's worth, again, the perspective that I am hearing is that they still feel like they are very involved in this recruitment, regardless of the situation. I don't know the ins and outs of it. It doesn't look great, but again, there's still some, people expressing that, hey, look, Miami, like we're definitely still in this recruitment. So I'm in wait and see mode, just passing along
Yeah.
what I'm being told, and we'll see where this situation ultimately lands if he's able to make it in by Saturday.
All right, let's start with, talking about this group of official visitors here this weekend. Let's start with the Miami commits. Offensive lineman Ben Congdon, who's a four-star prospect according to 24/7 Sports. He's from Ohio, from Tuscarawas Valley. Guy that's oozing with potential, 6'7", 285, pretty good high school wrestler, committed to Miami in the spring. And then running back Javian Mallory is a guy we talked about quite a bit here in these podcasts recently because Alabama seems to be kind of sniffing around, and so it's just at a point where it's like, okay, what are you feeling at this moment with JV and Mallory? So with those two guys, what's important for Miami to learn and know about these two guys this visit weekend?
Yeah, I think both those guys are interesting for different reasons. Ben Cogden, he was the first offensive tackle to commit, or he might have been the first offensive lineman to commit to Miami this cycle. And Miami's loaded up, with Jackson Cantwell,
Yeah.
guys like Joel Irvin, who they're super high on. They're extremely excited about Ben Cogden too. So curious just to take the temp on Ben Cogden. I don't think he took any other official visits, so he seems fully locked in with Miami, which is a good sign. He's a really good player. Miami is super high on his potential and what he could be. So, but I am curious if there's anyone else that's kind of sniffing around in his recruitment. And then JV and Mallory, for all the reasons you said, David, just where does where's this thing at right now? Miami
Yeah.
is exploring its options with Jay Lamar, who followed through with that visit to Georgia, who's expected in Athens this weekend. Derek Cooper is still on the table. I think he's seeing Ohio State to close out his summer swing of visits, and a decision could be around the corner for Derek Cooper. I wouldn't be surprised if one's not too far away. So I think you're in a situation where there's three backs and really only two spots, and you know one of those spots is going to Derek Cooper. So I'm curious. I am curious to see what the vibe is coming out of the weekend, and I think we'll have a lot more clarity on the back end of it.
All right, let's start with the guys not committed in Miami that are going to be visiting this weekend. And let's start with four-star defensive lineman Nolan Wilson, 6'4", listed at 240, number 99 overall player in the country, so a top 100 player at a Picayune Memorial High School in Mississippi. Definitely one of those kind of SEC. One thing that is standing out, Gabby, just with these official visits this summer, whether but and this is a good thing. Defensive line and defensive back. Miami's not shying away from dipping into
Yeah,
SEC country and,
right,
and going head to head with these SEC schools, SEC programs, and those are the programs. That's the league that stacks D linemen and DBs.
right.
Anyways, getting sidetracked. He's visited Alabama, Auburn, Ole Miss. Um, Interesting player when you watch him on tape. What are the vibes here with Miami going into the official visit?
Yeah, I think this is one that Miami really just kind of kicked the door down when they got him down in the spring and really impressed him. And again, David, you look at where he's looking at and I feel like we see this all the time, and it's like it's Miami and then either like Clemson, like another top tier ACC school, and then SEC, SEC, SEC. Like Miami is in a ton of major SEC recruiting battles, or like the lone ACC school along with a bunch of SEC schools. So yes, to your point, they are trying to dip into the swell, and this is where you need to fish if you want to really change things on the line of
Yeah,
scrimmage. But yeah, look, this is a kid from Mississippi. We've kind of
right.
done this before. Kamarion Franklin comes to mind, where Miami was borderline trending in this recruitment before Ole Miss backdoored it, and were able to acquire him at the last minute. I'm not holding my breath. I think Ole Miss is, of course, going to be one to watch for a school like this. Auburn dipped into this same high school a couple cycles ago and took a top 247 edge rusher in Jamonta Waller. And then you got of course Alabama in the mix, who's capable of always pulling a guy like this. So
Yeah,
uh,
tough one
yeah,
to
this is a
win.
tough one. I feel like there hasn't been enough legs in this one for me to feel like super confident in it. But we'll see, man. I mean, closing out the summer here, you never know what could happen.
Yeah, he's an interesting player. You watch his tape. He's a guy that just wins with straight up power, strength, length. You know, he's projected, I think, by 24/7 Sports as a defensive lineman, which might indicate more of like an interior guy. I think, I mean, I definitely see that. I'm not pushing back on that. I think he can also play on the edge as a defensive end in the right system. I mean, because he does win with power, length, and he creates knockback, and just a really good player. I think more and more you just want to land defensive linemen that can play anywhere on the line of scrimmage, line up at
Right.
multiple spots. He's definitely that type of player. Let's stay on the D line. Let's go to four-star defensive end. Ashari Charles, a guy we've talked about plenty here on the podcast, 6'2", 230, number 147 overall player in the country at a Venice high school. He has visited Missouri, Louisville, Kentucky, will visit Florida State. Uh, it looks like I think Labor Day weekend for their game against Alabama. Big time pass rusher. What are the vibes here going into this? Because he's a guy that Miami's kind of gone all in on here in the state of Florida in terms of edge rushers.
Right. Yeah. Miami's been all in on Shari Charles, and they've been involved for quite some time. They got him in the fall months for a home game, got him back in back-to-back weekends during the spring, get him back down for this last official visit, which has always kind of been the one circled. I think a lot of people have linked Shari Charles to Miami. So he's talking about making a decision, later on in the future, as far as maybe even in the fall or something like that. Again, I think that's atypical of just the recruiting world that we're in. We'll see how it goes this weekend, because if Miami wants him and Miami's planning on, really just truly taking that next step with him, I don't think they're gonna sit around and have him wait till, August where
Yeah.
he takes a Florida State official visit or whatnot, or take this thing into the fall. I think if Miami presses, maybe this was one where the timeline gets expedited a little bit. But again, I think this is one we also will have more clarity on, maybe a little bit after the weekend. He also saw Florida, I think sometime or I think maybe it was that first official visit weekend, like the May 16th one or something like that. So a few other schools, like the in-state schools, kind of came around and popped in, but Miami was the one that's been on in the longest. So I think the Hurricanes have a great shot in this recruitment.
To me, he's really good as like a stand-up edge rusher. He can also, do work as a 3-point uh, defensive end, violent player for a guy his size, 6'2", 230. Looks kind of compact on film. He kind of reminds me at the same stage as like a Jafari Harvey. So, good pass rusher and can really be a good situational player on third down. All right, let's stay on defense. Let's go three-star linebacker DQ Forkba, who goes 6 foot, 225. So, not the longest linebacker, but man, he is compact and strong when you see his body type in person. Three-star, 89 rating from 24/7 Sports at an IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. Has visited Florida, Florida State, Michigan, North Carolina. Personally, Gabby, I like him quite a bit. When we were out at the IMG Pro Day earlier, what was it, this spring? I forget the exact month.
Yeah.
But you know, he flashed to me. I didn't really know much about him. He flashed to me. He's athletic, even though he is, maybe not the prototypical length you want at linebacker. He is athletic. You watch his tape, he's a guy that comes downhill and will smack you. So coverage is kind of something he's got to be able to show at the college level, but good athlete that plays hard. And, I think he's a good player, but, Florida State want him, Michigan wants him, North Carolina wants him. Where does Miami stand in this mix with his recruitment?
Yeah, I think this is one that Miami kind of got on DQ Forkpa late, but he's a really good tester. Miami kind of watched him this spring and decided to kind of move forward with that offer. I don't know if he played at IMG last year, so he's someone that's relatively
Yeah,
new to
he
the
didn't.
program. So I think that's why Miami maybe take a little bit longer, kind of feeling him out. But I think once they saw him move around, run around, got his testing data from the Under Armour camps and all that stuff, wanted to size him up again. But he is someone who visited in the spring. And it sounds to me like he's interested. Miami's linebacker board is kind of, up in the air in some ways. They got Jordan Campbell committed, but, he's someone that, maybe ends up kind of being more of like an edge guy or, who knows what he kind of develops into at the next level. I feel like he's kind of a tweener in some ways. You got Justin Edwards, JJ Edwards out of Orlando, who I feel like Miami's in a great position to flip at this point. But Forkpa is another interesting type of player too. So I am curious to see, and I think just with Jermichael Garrett kind of off the board too, like maybe DQ Forkpa is one that maybe emerges over the weekend and Miami makes a run for. So still kind of getting a feel for that situation, but I think he's an interesting athlete.
To me, he's kind of like a better athlete version of Popo Aguirre. I think they're kind of similar molds, body type wise, and the way they play linebacker. Let's go local. Let's go offense. Three-star wide receiver Jason Lopez, 5'10", 165. Three-star prospect, 89 rating at a Chaminade Madonna Prep. One of the to me, one of the most interesting players in this class in the country because tremendous football athlete with his ability to play slot receiver. Also a really fun basketball player to watch. Even though he is 5'10", a lot of skill there. He could play college basketball if he wanted to just focus on that. He has visited NC State, West Virginia, Georgia Tech, and Florida State. Gabby, where did things stand here with Jason?
Yeah, the two sport situation is interesting. Miami loves Jason Lopez. They would love to add him to the roster, and they would love to take him and make him a Hurricane. I think it is a Miami Florida State battle that's kind of brewing. There haven't been many of these this cycle.
Yeah.
Like true Miami Florida State battles. I think that this might be like the first one of note that I can kind of think of. But yeah, I think that the basketball stuff is very real for him, and I think the opportunity to be told like, hey, you're gonna legitimately be able to play college basketball and college football. And I think Jay Lucas and that staff, I think, are open to Jason Lopez, exploring what that looks like and bringing him in and kind of just, showing him or, giving him an opportunity, I guess. I think at the same time, just being a point guard, it's you're almost like the quarterback of the team in basketball.
Hmm.
So just having so much responsibility, and so I think it's a delicate balance. Again, and I think Miami's all in on him on football. I think they like him, for basketball too. I'm curious what the situation and how he feels about the basketball football balance is coming out of the weekend because I think that will play a significant role in who acquires him and football wise, there's no doubt in my mind that he's a
Yeah.
top priority for Mario Cristobal and those guys. So the opportunity to stay home could ultimately be tough to pass up. But we'll see if he decides to go to Florida State and really try to do this two sport thing.
Yeah, I mean he's definitely good enough to go play college basketball if that's what he wanted to do. If he wants to be a pro in a sport, football is his path to do that. And just one of my favorite players in this class. Knows how to get open, very smooth,
Yeah,
create separation with ease, has the ball skills you want, going back to his basketball background. He's just gonna be a productive player at the college level. We saw it with Xavier Restrepo here in this offense. Jason Lopez, similar profile, better athlete than Restrepo at the same stage. And if I'm Miami football, I bring him in as my slot receiver, and I sleep very well at night,
absolutely.
knowing, and you're going back to back with Malachi Tony and Jason
Yeah.
Lopez potentially. Like that's as good
Yeah.
as it gets.
Yeah. And those are two like alpha personality too. Like
Yeah.
Jason Lopez is wired the right way. He's not just a good
Yes.
athlete. Like he is very wired the right way. Like I'm all in on this kid.
Same.
I think he's a stud. I think just the basketball stuff, the way like the explosiveness, the suddenness, a change of direct. I think that all shows up in basketball the same way you see the explosiveness on the football field. So yeah, I can only imagine this kid in a true college strength
Right.
and conditioning program where it's just he just really just
And
tightens up.
focusing on
Yep.
football,
Yeah,
he's gonna be,
he would be nuts. He like
yeah.
really truly like NFL potential as like a slot receiver. So yeah, I love this kid. I hope it works out for Miami because I think he's a fantastic player.
Three-star defensive lineman J.J. Finch, 6'3", 260 with an 88 grade. He comes out of Warren Central in Indianapolis, Indiana, has visited Alabama, Purdue, Michigan, and Tennessee. He's set to make, according to his profile, he's set to make his commitment on June 22nd.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much when the Miami visit wraps up. We'll see if that's still the case, you know, later on in the weekend. But man, he's an interesting player to me too. Like, kind of similar to Tyson Bacon, going into that official visit weekend when I'm watching him on tape. To me, kind of a similar player, which I think is a good thing. I think Tyson Bacon was very intriguing on tape. Long, athletic, interior defensive lineman. Body still has to fill out, it looks like a little bit on tape. But the movement skills, the length is interesting. To me, it's, kind of similar to Tyson Bacon. It's interesting to think about what he could be in 2 years in a
Yeah.
college program. He's got some big time schools after him too, Gabby. Where did things stand with JJ Finch?
Yeah, this is someone that Miami kind of emerged with late in the process. Tennessee is a school that seems to have some buzz going into again. If he's announcing on Sunday, Tennessee is a school that definitely has some buzz, and this will be his first time seeing Miami. But I think he definitely wanted to explore this option. Damian Lewis has been coming after him really hard, and he wanted to check out what Miami had to offer. But yeah, some big time programs in the mix for JJ Finch, and we'll see. We'll see if
Yeah,
we've seen this before. A couple cycles ago, Herbert Scroggins came in, maybe slightly different situations because he visited in the spring, but like all the buzz was on Auburn. Like he had a commitment date set. Everyone was kind of saying, "Oh, it's Auburn, it's Auburn, it's Auburn," and then gets down to Miami, and suddenly the whole tone changes. He commits to and
right.
ultimately signs with the Hurricanes. So, this is not it's not out of left field that Miami makes a strong impression on J.J. Finch and maybe changes the tone here. But right now, I'm watching Tennessee.
Yeah, you never know in recruiting, but it would seem like from a Miami standpoint, the best case scenario would be you hear, oh, he needs a few more days to think about
Right.
his decision. So
Yeah.
that would be something to try and key in on. All right, three-star defensive back Devontae Anderson is the final guy we'll talk about here. He goes 6'1", 185, West Orange High School in the Orlando area, 87 grade, has visited UCF, Rutgers, Auburn, and Maryland. Man, I'll admit, Gabby, I really like this guy on tape. Just long, physical, good ball skills, plays both ways for his team last year as a junior on offense, 450 yards and 3 touchdowns. On defense, 38 tackles, 10 pass breakups, and 3 INTs. To me, Gabby, like, you want to talk about just the way you should build a roster or construct a roster or uh, handle high school recruiting in this area, in this era of the 105, 105 scholarships. I think you just stack O linemen, D linemen, and DBs and figure it out because you ultimately don't want to keep fishing at those positions in the portal because you have to overpay for decent players. Let's not even say good players. Let's just say decent players. And Miami's not doing that really on the offensive line because they're recruiting so well there. The defensive line, I think they're almost getting to that point where they don't have to constantly be in the portal. DB, they took, 6 guys in the portal this last offseason. So that's a work in progress. To me, Devontae Anderson is a versatile type of DB where, okay, if he's fast enough, I think he can be a boundary corner. If you feel like the testing isn't quite there for him to be a corner, he can definitely be a safety with his ball skills, his ability to track it. He's physical enough to play safety. I think he's a very interesting player because I think he's typically the guy that would go to like a UCF or a Rutgers or a Maryland and perform well there, enter the portal, and he'd make a lot of money in that situation. Um, so I really like this tape by Miami.
Sorry, muted myself. I think he's an interesting player for sure. Miami kind of views him as that safety, David. Maybe not so much as a cornerback. Maybe the testing data is a part of the reason why. Just talking, with some other schools out there, it seems like there are some question marks, regarding just what the top end speed looks like, which is maybe why I think some schools have kind of given him that safety label.
Yeah.
But again, he's a good player in the state, and I'm with you. I'm all for stacking all of these defensive backs. For especially at the high school recruiting, just at the high school level, just throw numbers at this thing. I've seen him in person. He visited Miami this spring along with Devin Jackson and Danny Odom, another blue chip corner out of the Orlando area. And Devontae Anderson definitely looks the part. I don't think he had a Miami offer at that point, but Miami did offer this spring, and then have kind of turned it up here as of late. So safety board, I think they're kind of all in on Devin Jackson and Blake Stewart. I think beyond that, it's a ton of question marks with Tyreek Green potentially going to Georgia. So I think Devontae Anderson, making him a priority and potentially getting him on board, I think would be a big win for the program.
Yeah, we talk about like flipping this DB room in general. They did it this offseason with the portal. They need to keep doing that now in high school recruiting. Get these 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" DBs in your room and let the cream rise to the top. Because when you looked at the DB room last year, especially like the depth, the younger guys, it's just not long enough. It's just not. It doesn't look the way it's supposed to look, like it should. Um, Okay, let's wrap things up here, Gabby. Who are like the key guys? I ask you this every preview pod. If I'm asking you to pick out 3 guys to key in
Yeah.
on from this weekend, where you're interested how things go this weekend from a Miami perspective, who are the 3?
Yeah, I think the one I'm most interested in is Vance Spafford, just because it's just like, is he going to show up? Is he going to get in? And if he does, I think that's a really good sign for Miami. So Vance Spafford, one I'll bring to the board. The other two are Ashari Charles, just because is this a situation that Miami can kind of close out, start building up that edge board, and the other is Jason Lopez, because I think, again, I think Miami has an opportunity to kind of shut the door on this one. Let's see if they are able to capitalize on this situation and create a good situation for Jason Lopez, because this is also not a guy I want leaving
No,
I don't want him leaving to South Florida. I don't want him going somewhere else because he's just too good of a football player to allow that to happen. And I think there has been they have prioritized like at the end of the day, top players in South Florida. You got to keep those
right.
guys home. Jason Lopez is I mean, I think one of the best, most talented football players in South Florida, athletes,
100%.
period. So that's a guy that needs to play at Miami if that's the way you're going about your stuff. So find a way to get Jason Lopez done. And I think if you do, if you manage something with those three guys, I think it's a successful weekend.
All right, we'll get out of here on that note. Appreciate everyone for listening. Go check us out on the YouTube channel, the Inside the U YouTube channel. And until next time, take care.